In a grand kingdom filled with towering castles, bustling markets, and winding cobblestone streets, the king's guards were more than just soldiers. They were legends. Clad in gleaming silver armor polished to perfection, they stood as symbols of strength, honor, and unwavering loyalty. Every day, they marched through the city with their swords at their sides, ensuring peace and order reigned supreme. The people admired them not only for their bravery, but also for their discipline, which seemed almost otherworldly. Among these elite warriors was Captain Alden, a man whose reputation stretched far beyond the palace walls. With years of service under his belt, he commanded respect from both his men and the citizens. But what set Alden apart wasn't just his skill in battle or his leadership. It was something quieter, something many overlooked. Beneath his stern exterior lay a heart that cared deeply about others, especially those who couldn't defend themselves. While most guards followed orders without question, Alden often went out of his way to help those in need, whether it was an elderly woman carrying heavy baskets or a lost child searching for their parents. One sunny afternoon, while patrolling the outer edges of the marketplace, Alden noticed something unusual. Amidst the chaos of merchants shouting prices, children running around, and carts being pushed through narrow alleys, there sat a small boy on the ground. He was alone, his clothes patched and worn, yet there was something striking about him. His face glowed with innocence, and his wide eyes sparkled as if he carried secrets only he could understand. In his hands, he clutched a wooden toy soldier, its paint chipped but still recognizable. Alden paused, intrigued. Most children in the market were either playing tag or pestering their parents for sweets, but this boy seemed different. Instead of joining the noise, he simply watched everything unfold around him with quiet fascination. Curious, Alden approached cautiously so as not to startle him. Kneeling down to meet the boy's gaze, he offered a warm smile. "Hello there," he said gently, though the boy didn't respond. It didn't take long for Alden to realize why. As he tried speaking again, the boy tilted his head, his expression unchanged. That's when Alden understood. The child couldn't hear him. But instead of walking away, Alden stayed. Using simple hand gestures and pointing to nearby objects, he began communicating in his own way. Slowly, the boy responded, mimicking Alden's movements, and even drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. Through this silent exchange, Alden learned the boy's name, Elias. Despite his circumstances, Elias radiated joy. His laughter was infectious, and his imagination knew no bounds. With just a few strokes in the dirt, he conjured entire worlds, knights battling dragons, ships sailing across stormy seas, and castles perched atop mountains. Alden found himself captivated, transported back to his own childhood when dreams of heroism had fueled his days. There was something magical about Elias, something pure and untainted by the hardships of life. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden hues over the marketplace, Alden realized he didn't want to leave. For the first time in ages, he felt a connection that transcended words, a bond forged in kindness and understanding. Little did he know, this chance encounter would mark the beginning of a journey neither of them could have imagined. Over the following weeks, Captain Alden found himself drawn to the marketplace more often than usual. His duties as a guard kept him busy, but whenever he had a moment to spare, he made it a point to visit Elias. Each time, the boy greeted him with that same radiant smile, his wooden toy soldier always close at hand. Though they couldn't speak to each other in the traditional sense, their bond deepened through gestures, drawings, and shared moments of quiet understanding. Elias had an extraordinary way of seeing the world. To him, every crack in the cobblestones was a river waiting to be crossed, and every fluttering bird overhead was a messenger from distant lands. He would sit cross-legged on the ground, using sticks and stones to create elaborate scenes of knights defending castles or brave explorers venturing into uncharted territories. Alden marveled at the boy's creativity, realizing that Elias didn't need words to tell stories. His imagination spoke louder than any language ever could. One afternoon, As Alden watched Elias sketch a dragon-breathing fire onto a makeshift village, he noticed something remarkable. Despite the chaos in the drawing, there was always a hero standing tall amidst the destruction, a lone figure determined to protect others. It struck Alden how much this mirrored his own role as a guard. Perhaps Elias saw them as kindred spirits, both fighting battles in their own ways. But life wasn't easy for Elias. While Alden admired the boy's resilience, he couldn't ignore the challenges he faced daily. Many people in the marketplace treated Elias with indifference, if not outright cruelty. Merchants shooed him away when he lingered too long near their stalls, muttering under their breath about that mute child. Some even accused him of stealing food, though Alden knew better. He'd seen the boy share what little he had with stray cats wandering the streets. What hurt Alden most, however, were the taunts from older children. One day, while returning from patrol, he spotted a group of boys surrounding Elias. They mocked him mercilessly, mimicking his silence and laughing cruelly at his attempts to communicate. Elias tried to walk away, clutching his toy soldier tightly, but the bullies followed, pushing him back until he stumbled and fell. Alden's blood boiled. Without hesitation, he strode forward, his armor clinking with authority. "Enough," he barked, his voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. The boys froze, their smirks fading as they turned to see the towering figure of the king's guard glaring down at them. "Leave him alone," Alden commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. The boys scattered, casting fearful glances over their shoulders as they fled. Kneeling beside Elias, Alden placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The boy looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, but he managed a faint smile. Alden gave him a small nod, silently promising that he wouldn't let anyone hurt him again. In that moment, he vowed to do whatever it took to ensure Elias felt safe, not just in fleeting visits, but every single day. As days turned into weeks, Alden began bringing small gifts for Elias during his patrols. Sometimes it was a piece of fruit wrapped in cloth, other times a shiny pebble or a carved whistle. These tokens might have seemed insignificant to others, but to Elias they meant the world. With each gift, his trust in Alden grew stronger, and their connection became unshakable. Alden also started paying closer attention to the boy's mannerisms, learning how to interpret his expressions and movements. He discovered that Elias communicated not only through gestures but also through art. On one occasion, the boy drew a picture of a knight riding a horse, complete with stars twinkling above. When Alden pointed to the knight, Elias tapped his chest proudly, then pointed to Alden. It was clear, in Elias's eyes, Alden wasn't just a guard, he was a hero. These interactions filled Alden with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. As a soldier, he was trained to follow orders and maintain order. But with Elias, he found himself stepping outside the rigid boundaries of duty. This wasn't about rules or protocol. It was about kindness, empathy, and making a difference in someone's life. And as he walked away from yet another heartfelt meeting with the boy, Alden realized that Elias had given him something invaluable in return, a renewed belief in the power of compassion. As the days passed, Captain Alden's protective instincts toward Elias only grew stronger. He couldn't shake the image of the boy sitting alone on the cobblestones, his cheerful demeanor masking the hardships he faced daily. The marketplace, once a vibrant hub of activity, now seemed like a dangerous place for someone as vulnerable as Elias. Though Alden tried to keep an eye on him whenever possible, he knew he couldn't be everywhere at once. It weighed heavily on his heart, knowing that even a moment's absence could leave the boy exposed to cruelty or harm. One evening, after finishing his patrol, Alden returned to the barracks deep in thought. His fellow guards noticed the distant look in his eyes and asked what troubled him. At first, Alden hesitated. Sharing personal concerns wasn't something he was accustomed to. But eventually, he opened up about Elias. He spoke of the boy's bright spirit, his love for storytelling, and the challenges he faced because of his inability to hear or speak. To Alden's surprise, his comrades didn't dismiss his worries. Instead, they listened intently, their expressions softening with each word. "You've got a good heart, Alden," said one of the younger guards, a man named Rylan. "But you can't protect him all by yourself. Maybe we can help." The idea took root quickly. Over the next few days, the guards began brainstorming ways to make Elias's life safer and happier. They knew they couldn't change how others treated him overnight, but they could create a space where he felt welcome and secure. Their solution: a small fortress, a place just for Elias, tucked away in a quiet corner of the marketplace. It wouldn't be grand or elaborate, but it would belong to him, a sanctuary where he could play and dream without fear. With this plan in mind, the guards set to work during their free time. Using scraps of wood from old training equipment and leftover materials from palace repairs, they pieced together the beginnings of the structure. Some sanded planks until they gleamed, while others hammered nails with precision. Even those who weren't skilled builders contributed in their own way, gathering colorful fabrics and ribbons to decorate the fortress once it was complete. It became a team effort, a labor of love fueled by their shared desire to see Elias smile. Meanwhile, Alden had another idea brewing in his mind. He wanted to give Elias something truly special, a gift that would remind him of his courage and imagination. Remembering the boy's fascination with knights and heroes, Alden approached a local artisan known for crafting intricate wooden carvings. Together, they designed a small shield, its surface adorned with stars and moons etched into the wood. It wasn't heavy or meant for battle. It was symbolic, a token of strength and belonging. The artisan worked tirelessly, pouring his skill into every detail, and when the shield was finally finished, it was nothing short of breathtaking. But as much as Alden cherished these plans, he also knew they weren't enough. The marketplace, no matter how charming or lively, wasn't always safe for a child like Elias. What he really wanted was to bring the boy inside the palace walls, a place where he could roam freely under royal protection. Yet such a request was unprecedented. The palace was reserved for nobles, dignitaries, and those of high standing. A poor, disabled child from the streets. It was unthinkable, or so everyone believed. Determined to try, Alden decided to approach the king himself. He rehearsed his words carefully, knowing he'd need more than just sentiment to sway the court. He prepared to highlight Elias's unique qualities, his resilience, his creativity, and the joy he brought to those around him. But as he stood before the massive gates of the palace, clutching the wooden shield tightly, doubt crept into his mind. Would the king even listen? Or would Alden's plea fall on deaf ears, dismissed as foolishness? Still, Alden refused to give up. If there was even the slightest chance of securing a better future for Elias, he owed it to the boy to try. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. For Elias, he would risk everything, even rejection from the very institution he had sworn to serve. The day of the harvest festival finally arrived, and the entire kingdom buzzed with excitement. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, stalls overflowed with fresh produce and handmade crafts, and the air was filled with the aroma of roasted nuts and sweet pastries. It was a time for celebration, a moment when the barriers between nobles and commoners seemed to blur, if only briefly. For Captain Alden and his fellow guards, it was also the perfect opportunity to unveil their surprise for Elias. Early that morning, before the sun had fully risen, the guards gathered at the edge of the marketplace. The small fortress they had been building over the past weeks stood proudly in a secluded corner, its wooden walls sturdy and adorned with ribbons that danced in the wind. They had worked tirelessly to ensure every detail was perfect, from the tiny battlements atop the structure to the soft blankets spread inside, creating a cozy space where Elias could sit and dream. A sense of pride swelled in their chests as they stepped back to admire their handiwork. As the festival began, Alden went to fetch Elias, his heart pounding with anticipation. He found the boy sitting in his usual spot, clutching his wooden toy soldier and watching the festivities unfold around him. When Alden approached, Elias's face lit up immediately, his eyes sparkling with recognition. Without a word, Alden gestured for him to follow, holding out his hand. Trusting as always, Elias slipped his small fingers into Alden's palm and allowed himself to be led through the crowded streets. When they reached the corner where the fortress stood, Alden stopped and turned to Elias, placing both hands on his shoulders. "This is for you," he said softly, though he knew the boy couldn't hear him. Instead, he pointed toward the structure, his expression brimming with warmth and encouragement. Elias's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. His lips parted in awe, and for a moment, he simply stood there, frozen in disbelief. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, running his hands along the smooth wooden walls. Inside, he discovered piles of cushions, colorful drawings pinned to the beams, and even a few toys left by the guards. It was more than just a play area. It was a place where he belonged, a space built with love and care. Overwhelmed with emotion, Elias turned to Alden and threw his arms around him in a tight hug. Though no words were spoken, the gratitude in his embrace was unmistakable. But the surprises didn't end there. As Elias explored his new fortress, Alden knelt down beside him and revealed the custom-made wooden shield. Its surface gleamed in the sunlight, the carvings of stars and moons catching the light like magic. Alden held it up for Elias to see, pointing to the designs and then tapping the boy's chest gently. "For you," he repeated, his voice filled with sincerity. "You're brave, just like a knight." Elias stared at the shield, his eyes shining with wonder. He traced the patterns with his fingers, marveling at how perfectly it captured the stories he loved to tell. Unable to contain his joy, he hugged the shield close to his chest, rocking back and forth as tears streamed down his cheeks. It was a moment of pure happiness, one that touched everyone who witnessed it, including the other guards, who looked on with smiles tugging at their lips. Word of the gesture quickly spread throughout the marketplace. Children from nearby neighborhoods, drawn by curiosity, began gathering around the fortress, eager to meet the boy who now had his very own castle. At first, Elias seemed hesitant, unsure of how to interact with so many new faces. But with Alden's reassuring presence and the guard's gentle encouragement, he soon warmed up, inviting the children to join him inside. Together, they played games, told stories, and laughed until their sides hurt. For the first time in his life, Elias wasn't an outsider looking in. He was the center of attention, beloved and accepted. And as Alden watched the boy laugh and play, surrounded by friends, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had started as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something far greater. A reminder that even in a world full of challenges, compassion could create moments of pure magic. The story of the king's guards and their act of kindness toward Elias didn't stay hidden for long. News traveled quickly in the kingdom, especially during the lively harvest festival. Merchants, townsfolk, and even visiting dignitaries couldn't help but notice the joy radiating from the corner of the marketplace where Elias's fortress stood. Children laughed and played around the wooden structure, while Elias himself seemed to glow with happiness, clutching his new shield as though it were a treasure beyond measure. Among those who heard whispers of the tale was Queen Illyra, known throughout the land not only for her grace, but also for her deep compassion. Unlike her husband, King Edric, who often prioritized tradition and protocol, the queen had a keen eye for stories that revealed the humanity behind the crown. Intrigued by what she'd heard, she summoned Captain Alden to the palace, requesting an audience to learn more about the boy and the guard's efforts. When Alden arrived at the throne room, he felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Standing before the queen was no small matter, and though he believed wholeheartedly in what they had done for Elias, he worried that their actions might be seen as overstepping their roles as guards. Still, he straightened his posture, bowed deeply, and began recounting the story. He spoke of Elias's resilience, his boundless imagination, and the challenges he faced because of his inability to hear or speak. He described how the guards had come together to build the fortress, and create a safe space for the boy, driven not by orders, but by a shared desire to make a difference. As Alden spoke, Queen Illyra listened intently, her expression softening with each detail. She asked thoughtful questions about how Elias communicated, what brought him joy, and how the guards had managed to connect with him despite the barriers between them. When Alden mentioned the bullying Elias endured and the moments when he intervened to protect the boy, the queen's eyes filled with emotion. It was clear that the story had touched her deeply. "You've shown great kindness," she said finally, her voice warm yet regal. "But tell me, Captain Alden, what do you hope will come of this? What does Elias need most?" Alden hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Your Majesty, Elias is a remarkable child. His spirit is stronger than anything I've ever seen, but he deserves more than just a safe place to play. He deserves to feel valued, to know that he belongs, not just in the marketplace, but in the heart of the kingdom itself." The queen nodded slowly, her gaze drifting to the window where the sounds of celebration still echoed faintly. After a moment of contemplation, she rose from her throne and addressed Alden with a tone of quiet determination. "Bring him to me," she said. "I wish to meet this boy myself." The following day, Alden escorted Elias to the palace, his heart pounding with anticipation. Dressed in his finest tunic, a gift from one of the guardsmen, Elias walked hand in hand with Alden, his wide eyes taking in the grandeur of the castle halls. Servants and courtiers whispered curiously as they passed, but Alden kept his focus on the boy, ensuring he felt comfortable and unafraid. When they reached the queen's chambers, Elias froze momentarily, overwhelmed by the sight of the elegant woman seated before him. Queen Illyra smiled warmly, rising to greet him. Without hesitation, she knelt down to meet his gaze, placing herself at his level. Using simple gestures and expressions, she introduced herself, mimicking Alden's earlier methods of communication. To everyone's amazement, Elias responded almost immediately, his natural charm shining through as he offered her a shy smile. Over the next hour, the queen spent time getting to know Elias, learning about his love for storytelling and his fascination with knights and dragons. She marveled at how easily he expressed himself through drawings and gestures, proving that words weren't necessary to convey the depth of his soul. By the end of their meeting, Queen Illyra had made her decision. "Elias," she said gently, turning to Alden, "will always have a place within these walls. From this day forward, he is welcome here whenever he wishes. Let it be known that our kingdom values not only strength and tradition, but also kindness, creativity, and courage." Her decree sent ripples of astonishment through the court, but none dared question her wisdom. For Alden and the guards, the queen's words were more than just permission. They were validation. Their act of kindness had sparked something greater, a reminder that true leadership lies in lifting others up. And for Elias, the palace gates opening to him symbolized far more than safety. It marked the beginning of a life where he could shine, unburdened by judgment or fear. With Queen Illyra's blessing, Elias's life transformed in ways no one could have imagined. The palace gates, once a distant dream for someone like him, now opened wide to welcome him whenever he wished. At first, Elias was hesitant, his small frame dwarfed by the towering columns and opulent halls of the castle. But the warmth and kindness shown to him by the queen and her attendants quickly put him at ease. Servants greeted him with smiles, courtiers nodded respectfully, and even the stern-faced advisors softened when they saw the boy's infectious grin. One of the most significant changes came when the queen arranged for Elias to learn sign language. She summoned skilled teachers from across the kingdom, ensuring that he would have the tools to communicate more effectively. For the first time in his life, Elias discovered a way to express himself without relying solely on gestures or drawings. His progress was remarkable. Within weeks, he was signing simple phrases like "thank you" and "I am happy," his fingers moving with newfound confidence. The guards, eager to connect with him further, began learning basic signs as well, turning their interactions into joyful exchanges filled with laughter and understanding. Elias also found an unexpected passion in storytelling. Encouraged by the queen, palace scribes started documenting his imaginative tales, transforming them into beautifully illustrated books. These stories, brimming with brave knights, mythical creatures, and faraway lands, captured the hearts of everyone who read them. What made them truly special, however, was how they reflected Elias's unique perspective. A world seen through eyes unclouded by cynicism or fear. One tale, about a deaf hero who saved his village using cleverness rather than strength, became particularly beloved, inspiring both children and adults alike. Even King Edric, initially skeptical of allowing a commoner such access to the royal grounds, warmed to Elias over time. During grand feasts, the king often invited the boy to sit beside him, curious to hear snippets of his stories through interpreters. Though Elias couldn't speak aloud, his presence commanded attention. With animated gestures and vivid expressions, he wove tales that left the entire hall spellbound. On one occasion, after hearing a story about a knight rescuing a trapped dragon, the king chuckled and declared, "If this lad were older, I'd make him head of my council." For Alden and the other guards, seeing Elias thrive brought immense pride. Their humble act of kindness had blossomed into something extraordinary, proving that compassion could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what they had envisioned. They continued to visit him regularly, joining in games or helping him practice his signs. Some even brought their own families to meet him, introducing their children to the boy who had become a symbol of hope and resilience. The marketplace, too, underwent a subtle shift. Merchants who had once dismissed Elias now greeted him warmly, offering him fruit or trinkets as tokens of goodwill. Children flocked to his fortress, eager to play alongside the boy whose stories had become legendary. Even the older boys who had once bullied him approached him hesitantly, seeking forgiveness and friendship. Elias, ever forgiving, welcomed them with open arms, teaching them the power of kindness through his actions. As months turned into years, Elias grew not only in age, but also in spirit. He became a bridge between worlds, the bustling streets of the marketplace and the polished halls of the palace. People from all walks of life admired him, not out of pity, but because he reminded them of the beauty in diversity and the strength found in vulnerability. Through it all, Alden remained a steadfast figure in his life, a guardian and friend who never stopped believing in the boy's potential. What started as a simple gesture of goodwill had ignited a chain reaction, changing not just Elias's life, but the entire kingdom. It proved that acts of kindness, no matter how small, could create waves of change, reminding everyone that true greatness lies not in titles or riches, but in the ability to uplift others. And as Elias stood atop the palace steps one evening, gazing at the stars with his wooden shield resting against his side, he knew he was exactly where he belonged, surrounded by love, acceptance, and endless possibilities. Years passed, and Elias grew from a wide-eyed boy into a young man whose presence continued to inspire everyone around him. The kingdom had changed in subtle yet profound ways because of him. His stories, once whispered among children in the marketplace, were now celebrated as timeless tales of courage and imagination. Books filled with his adventures lined the shelves of libraries, their pages worn from being read over and over again. Even travelers from distant lands spoke of the silent storyteller whose words transcended language and touched hearts. Elias's fortress in the marketplace remained a cherished landmark, though it had grown far beyond its humble beginnings. What started as a small wooden structure built by the king's guards had expanded into a vibrant community center for children of all backgrounds. Bright murals adorned its walls, depicting scenes from Elias's stories: knights battling dragons, explorers sailing uncharted seas, and heroes saving villages under starlit skies. Inside, shelves overflowed with toys, books, and art supplies donated by grateful citizens who wanted to honor the boy who had brought so much joy to their lives. The guards, now older and grayer, often visited the center, reminiscing about the days when they first met Elias. They marveled at how their simple idea, a safe haven for one child, had blossomed into something that benefited an entire generation. Some brought their grandchildren along, introducing them to the young man who had taught them the value of kindness. Elias greeted each visitor with the same warmth he'd shown years ago, signing greetings and sharing smiles that needed no translation. But perhaps the most remarkable change was within Elias himself. Though he still couldn't hear or speak, his confidence had soared. He became a mentor to other children, especially those who felt different or excluded. Using sign language and gestures, he encouraged them to embrace their uniqueness and find strength in their struggles. One little girl, born without the use of her legs, looked up to Elias as her hero. Inspired by his bravery, she learned to navigate the world on her own terms, just as he had done. To Elias, there was no greater reward than seeing others discover their potential. Even the royal family remained deeply connected to Elias. Queen Elira, now retired from public duties, often invited him to afternoon teas, where they exchanged stories and laughter. King Edric, once rigid and formal, softened considerably in his later years, often teasing Elias about becoming the court's official storyteller. During festivals, Elias would stand beside the king on the palace balcony, waving to the cheering crowds below. His wooden shield, now polished and displayed in the throne room, served as a reminder of the bond between the monarchy and its people. Captain Alden, too, found peace in knowing that his decision to help Elias had made such a lasting impact. Though he had long since retired from active duty, he spent his days volunteering at the community center, teaching children about honor, loyalty, and compassion. On quiet evenings, he would sit with Elias, watching the sun set over the kingdom they both loved. Neither needed to say a word. Their friendship was a testament to the power of understanding and trust. As Elias stood in the marketplace one day, surrounded by laughing children and colorful banners fluttering in the breeze, he reflected on how far he had come. Once a lonely boy sitting on cobblestones, he was now a beacon of hope for countless others. He thought of Alden, the guards, and the queen, people who had seen his worth when the world turned a blind eye. Their kindness had given him not just a home but a purpose, to remind others that everyone has a story worth telling, no matter how silent it may seem. And so, Elias continued to dream, to create, and to share his light with the world. His journey proved that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change, leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations to come. As the years rolled on, Elias's influence continued to ripple through the kingdom like gentle waves lapping at the shore. The boy who had once been an outsider, sitting alone on the cobblestones with his wooden toy soldier, was now a legend, a symbol of resilience, creativity, and the transformative power of kindness. His stories, told through signs, drawings, and vivid expressions, had become part of the kingdom's cultural fabric, passed down from one generation to the next. The community center that began as a modest fortress built by the king's guards evolved into something extraordinary. It became a hub not just for children, but for people of all ages. Artists painted murals celebrating unity. Musicians composed songs inspired by Elias's tales, and elders gathered to share wisdom under its welcoming roof. A plaque near the entrance read, "Dedicated to Elias, whose courage reminded us all that every voice matters." Visitors from neighboring kingdoms came to see this place of wonder, marveling at how a single act of compassion could inspire such lasting change. Elias himself grew wiser with age, though his youthful spirit never faded. He spent his days mentoring young storytellers, encouraging them to find their own voices and embrace their unique perspectives. One of his favorite activities was hosting storytelling nights in the marketplace, where children and adults alike would gather around a crackling fire to listen to tales of bravery and adventure. Though Elias communicated through sign language, interpreters ensured his words reached everyone, and his animated gestures needed no translation. They spoke directly to the heart. Captain Alden, now an elderly man with silver hair and a slower gait, attended these gatherings faithfully. Sitting beside Elias, He watched with pride as the young man captivated audiences with his boundless imagination. Sometimes, during quieter moments, Alden would recall their first meeting, the shy boy clutching his toy soldier, drawing pictures in the dirt. He marveled at how far they had both come since then, their lives intertwined by fate and kindness. Onlookers often remarked on the deep bond between them, noting how two individuals from vastly different worlds had created something beautiful together. Even the royal family carried Elias's legacy forward. Queen Elira, though frail in her later years, remained a fierce advocate for inclusivity and compassion within the kingdom. She established scholarships for children with disabilities, ensuring they had access to education and opportunities. Her final decree before passing was to rename the community center Elias's Haven, cementing his place in history forever. King Edric, too, softened further with time, often recounting stories of the silent hero who had taught him the importance of looking beyond appearances. But perhaps the greatest testament to Elias's impact was the way people treated one another. Inspired by his journey, the citizens of the kingdom began to prioritize empathy and understanding. Merchants offered discounts to struggling families, neighbors helped repair damaged homes after storms, and children played side by side without regard for differences. Acts of kindness, once rare, became commonplace, a living tribute to the boy who had shown them all what it meant to care. When Elias eventually passed away, surrounded by loved ones and cherished memories, the entire kingdom mourned. Flags flew at half-mast, bells tolled solemnly, and candles flickered in windows across the land. Yet even in grief, there was celebration, for Elias's life had been a gift, a reminder that true strength lies not in physical prowess or wealth, but in the ability to uplift others. Today, generations later, Elias's story is still told. Parents read his books to wide-eyed children, pointing to illustrations of knights and dragons while teaching lessons about courage and acceptance. Tourists visit Elias's Haven, marveling at its vibrant colors and rich history. And somewhere in the palace archives, tucked away among royal decrees and treaties, lies a simple wooden shield adorned with stars and moons, a timeless symbol of hope, belonging, and the enduring power of kindness. In the end, Elias's legacy wasn't just about the things he achieved. It was about the hearts he touched and the lives he changed. Through him, the kingdom learned that greatness isn't measured by titles or riches, but by the love we give and the compassion we show. And so, his story lives on, a priceless reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can leave an everlasting mark on the world.